good afternoon or good evening from wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Angeline Constantinou, and I am your empowerment life coach and podcaster of Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. So, welcome to the broadcast here. And you can find my podcast on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google, Apple, and all the live streams that you listen to. And please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. So we are actually live on my YouTube channel right now. So if you're watching this live right now, please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to my YouTube channel as I broadcast live podcast episodes weekly. And also we launch new podcast episodes every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. So my podcast is all about helping domestic abuse survivors find their voice, amplify their voice, regain their power, and share their real life stories of how they are thriving after domestic abuse and empowering women to live their best lives. So we're here to help you regain your power and your freedom back. And if you would like to, and this is for women only, if you would like to join my free Facebook group, just type in the search bar, please, Let's Break the Silence. And please subscribe to my newsletter for announcements. So please go to my website at letsbreakthesilence.com. And if you would like to book a call with me to see if we can work together, that's great too. So please check out my podcast there and my 9-week coaching signature program that has just launched for women who are domestic abuse survivors. Okay, so without further ado, I am bringing on a very special guest, and I had the pleasure of being on Eileen Dong's podcast. This was about a couple of months ago. It was the Miss Texas Show podcast. So Eileen Dong is a lived experience consultant, TEDx speaker, and author on gender-based violence, its intersections, gender equality, as well as culturally and linguistically responsive care and diversity and inclusion. She is the executive director of Hope Picks Global, a nonprofit organization dedicated to victims of human trafficking, sexual assault, and domestic violence. Eileen is also a linguist and subject matter expert for HSL, ICE, DOJ, FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, USCIS. Eileen endured poly-victimization while her family was 8,000 miles away in China. Because of the honor and shame stigma, it took a lot of courage to break the silence. Eileen has become a bridge among culturally specific communities, victim service providers, and law enforcement. Eileen's long-term vision is to build shelters and to change the culture for a world free from violence, exploitation, and slavery. Ms. Dong's merits have been recognized by various government officials, such as the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, the United States Congress Special Congressional Recognition, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, and the Atlanta City Council Sylvester Turner, Mayor of Houston, proclaimed January 19th as Eileen Dong Day. So Eileen has an incredible story to share because she is here to break the silence on my podcast. So without further ado, hi, Eileen.
Hi, Angeline. Thank you. It's my honor to be here. Hi, everyone.
And it's a pleasure and an honor for you to be here as well. And by the way, we are broadcasting live in my private Facebook group and my Facebook fan page, which is Let's Break the Silence, and also my YouTube channel. So Eileen, you have an incredible story to share, because I know that with domestic violence, there's a lot of shame because women are afraid to come forward. So with that being said, first of all, I want to ask you, what time is it where you are?
Well, I am here in Houston, Texas right now,
Wow.
1:16 p.m. And as we call, hi y'all.
Hi, y'all. I love it. And I'm flying down to Houston, Texas to visit you.
Absolutely.
And
I'll
we're going
take
to have
you to the
coffee and
barbecue, take
collaborate.
you to NASA, and we'll have loads of fun.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for that day. And that will happen. We will make a plan. So, anyways, Eileen, like I said, you have an incredible story to share. So, what happened?
Yeah, as you have read about my bio, poly-victimization, and it is a word that, is not commonly used. And to be honest, I didn't understand. I mean, we understand the word, but we really don't know what that really entail until I got into the nonprofit and volunteer and philanthropic work. But in short, the work that I do right now is related to this. I am a victim of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking, and that's what really entails that means like poly-victimization, and it all started from domestic violence. That's what I want to educate people about. It's kind of, there's the intersection. That's what I talk in my bio, because it doesn't just happen once. And domestic violence can involve, I used to think domestic violence is just violence. I used to think like, financial abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse are not part of the domestic violence. And as I get into that, I learned that, oh my God, I am a victim of all of these. So that's how it all got started. I just, those people what we call bookworm, book smart, and I know like how to be a good student, how to be a good businesswoman, and I started my own business. But when it comes to personal relationship, I had no clue. I literally just believe what people tell me. If a man tells me, say I love you, I just believe they say what they say, until one day I found myself, like I mentioned, 8,000 miles away, because all my family are still in China, and that's where I was born and raised, from Shanghai, China. And in short, this person flowered me with gifts and fake promises. Say, oh, I love you. He sends me chocolate. I love chocolate. He sends me flowers. And back in the days, they had what, 1-800 flowers, and those like edible arrangements. Like everyone, almost like every week, I get a knock on the door and have those deliveries. And eventually I sort of like just believe, I said, well, maybe this person does love me, or like me a lot, to make these efforts to do that. And unfortunately, that was just the beginning of the disaster, which back then I didn't understand. So we fell in love with each other, and I fell in love with him. I don't really, today I am having the doubt. I'm like, did he ever love me when I went through that? And I'll come back to this later. But I fell in love with him, and he started really trying to tell you, say, you know what, I am the only person who loves you. Because I had girlfriends, they will tell me, say, you know what, Eileen, be careful, don't be so naive. Or some of my friends say, don't be so stupid to really, just listen, or believe what he says. See what he does, and see what his friend says, and all of these. But back then, like I said, I didn't know. So I started to think, well, are those girlfriends like, are you my friends? You don't care about me. Why are you telling me this? Are you just jealous that I finally find someone who cares about me? And, so that's when he started to like, to show like, he cares, right? And then he started isolating me using these excuses. He said, you know what, I love you, but your friends, they don't know that they're not here for you, and they want to break you up from me, because then they can be happy for whatever the reason they are. So eventually I got isolated from all my friends. Another friend of mine said, you know what, I've only seen his face, and literally she was like, ew, he looks like evil. I don't want to, I want you to be careful from him. But I said, you guys are crazy, you ladies are crazy, and you don't care about me, so I'm not gonna be your friend. And same thing, I talked to even my family, and my mom was like, well, as long as you're happy, and that's your decision. But years later, like I said, I'll go back. But that's how he isolated me. And eventually I got no friends. It was like my friends were his friends, my friends were our friends, which we developed. So I live in this like little circle of friends that was fake, which later on I learned this is called fair weather friends. And then I mentioned I had a business, and he started isolating me in another way, financially abuse, which I learned later. He was like, you know what, I don't need you to work. I make a good income, so you don't have to work. Why don't we just, have you take care of me? And then if I have to travel, then I'll travel with you. I said, well, yeah, that makes sense. Especially we talked about the cultural stigma. In my culture from China, my mom is like, success to me, it doesn't really have to mean money, but to a lot of the people, success means money. But she thinks like you don't have to have a good job, you don't have to make good money, you don't have to have a business. You just need a good man. You need a good man. You get married, have children. That's it. That's
Right.
success, what it looks like for women over there. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna follow the tradition and just have a person with me. So we got into the intimate relationship, and I don't work anymore. And back then I said my full-time job was really just to socialize with those intimate partners and or wives or girlfriends of those that circle of friends that are in the business together. And that was really my job. And my job was to take care of him and I, and that's all. Until things break down, I find out things that I'm not supposed to find out. And that's when the abuse started. And the abuse started, in many different shapes. Like I now realize that I was called a loser because I don't do business anymore. I was called a loser, say, you don't do anything. Well, you told me not to do anything anymore. Right. So you and I do the show and the speaking. And if you get told at least 3 times, they said, to make an impression. I was told, I don't know, 30 times about that. I eventually begin to believe, you know what? I look in the mirror, I said, maybe no man is going to care about me. Maybe I am a loser. So
Mhm.
what do I do? If he beats me up, you know what? In China, people beat their wife up too. So who cares? It's okay. I'm just going to stay. And that's how everything really went down further the hill. When I realized that I have the brain injury, when I had the concussion, I said I have to choose between life or death. What do I choose? It's not like I can endure, say, okay, you verbally abused me, I don't like it, but I can maybe endure that. And I had this fear. Even yesterday I had a meeting, people say, what are some of the misconceptions? I said, well, the misconception is that anyone can fall in victims into this kind of crime, including people like from different backgrounds, race,
Oh,
nationality, anything, right? But in my case, like, educational background, you'll think like maybe people didn't speak the language and didn't have a job or a business they'll fall into, but anyone can. So that's sort of the short version. And then afterwards, I have to run for life, and I have no family here, so I have to crash on people's couches,
oh,
shelters, and basically become homeless. So I mean, I have a choice. I had a choice to go back home, but I didn't because of my pride. I was like, you know what, mom, I'm
mhm.
not gonna show you. And especially remember, she said, she was like, it's your choice. And my friends today, they were like, well, I'm not the kind of person who tell you I told you, but I did tell you. And so I had to suck it up. You know what, it's a lesson learned, and I made this mistake, and I brought this to myself. But it's more importantly, how do I utilize this lesson to share with other people, to help other people, to empower other people? Say, hey, I am from 8,000 miles away, and I have no family, I have no couches to crash on my relatives. I have to choose life or death, and I chose this, but I came out and came out better. And if I can do this, so can you. So yeah, homelessness, human trafficking, drugs, prostitution, you name it. All those things I thought you just saw on TV. And I thought I was a good girl, good student, and I always, follow the laws and everything. I never think like I would experience those in my own life, in real life. But here I am.
But here you are. Look at you. What a strong woman. And you and I have similar stories, because
Yes.
I remember when I set out to work in corporate America, he's semi retired. I went out to work for other companies and I made new friends. And that's when the resentment builds. It's the resentment and anger really built up. And I remember, like you said, you were told not to, like regarding the friendships, it was only his friends and not your friends. So that is a form of abuse. And there was financial abuse too.
Yes.
Yes. So, all right. So the homelessness I can understand. So what strategies did you incorporate in your life? What to get to where you are now today?
I come from China again, and I grew up. My mother's parents, they're those generation that my grandmother is a doctor and my grandfather is an engineer. They both speak English and Japanese and had a college degree, and that was very rare in China. I'm saying that because I was lectured every day from my grandma because she's a doctor. She'll say, "Eat this at the dinner table. Eat this because this is good for your kidney. Eat that. That's good for your that whatever." Every time she lectures me. But back then, I used to feel like that's very bothersome. Like, just shut up. I don't want to hear that anymore. But today, I really realized, like, everything she taught me, I applied to that. So, in short, when I was going through this, there are many different ways. As you know, there are trauma recovery centers, there are therapists, there are drugs, medicines that for depression, PTSD, and anxiety, and all those choices were available to me. And when given those choices, and you are the first person actually heard me publicly speaking about this. I was going to speak at a event last week, but got postponed to next month because of the weather here locally. But I used my holistic approach. So, like we say, like we anything we need to kill the root cause. Like I tell my friend, "Oh gosh, I have a migraine," and my friend say, "I have a bottle of ibuprofen. You want it?" and I'll say, "This is what I say," and I this is what I actually do. I would literally just let myself hurt for 3 days until like the third day I could not sleep and I have a meeting tomorrow. I must be of sound mind. Then I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But this is like how much I try to avoid modern medicine. So I try to use a holistic approach. So for instance, I said, okay, if it's migraine, what is the cause of the migraine? If I didn't sleep enough, then just go sleep. If it was stress, well, de-stress, go exercise, go for a walk, or in some case, like I said, I like chocolate, so just munch on chocolate or something. And back then, I must say, it's easier to say today, looking back, say, oh, this is what I did. But for those who are listening, who are going through domestic violence or any kind of violence against women and these trauma, I tell you that there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel. Because I keep bumping myself and have blood, and I said I stand back up and wipe my blood and I wipe my tears and keep going, because you're not always going to be successful of what you're doing. And again, we talked about success early. It doesn't mean you're successful because you made a lot of money. It doesn't mean you're successful because you have a successful business, or in this case, you have a good boyfriend and or husband. It's about your value. And again, in my culture, I have to retrain myself. I remember one of the ladies I talked to was from India, and I said, "You know better. I cannot have self love because loving myself in my culture equals selfish. I am not a selfish person. I am not going to love myself." So, end of story. So, it's a constant process of retraining my brain to understand the self value. Remember, I talked about I look myself in the mirror, I say, I hate myself. I don't think any man is gonna love me. But when you regain the confidence, again, I'm not trying to teach you to be in the market. I think you need to have your own healing, especially you come from a domestic violence relationship. But it's not the best solution to jump from one relationship to another, because when you're vulnerable, then you're not yourself. Your energy will attract this kind of people who are perpetrators, and you're just going to end up re-victimizing yourself. And I'm telling you from the standpoint that I have done that to myself, because people take advantage of you. Say, wow, at first, I was just telling everyone and crying and crying and tell everyone, and people take advantage of that. So the most important thing I did was to re-equip myself. Whether what it looks like to you is, say, if you don't have a degree, you go get a degree. If you don't have job skills, even get a certificate. If you don't speak English, go take ESL lessons. Or other things that you think, if you don't have to worry about money, then go volunteer. I tell you, volunteer was like one of the really lifesaver to me, because I realized, okay, what happened to me cannot be reversed. If I can tell my younger self, I would say, don't do that. But I can't do that. So I can go help other people to prevent that from happening. And when I started volunteering, I cannot begin to share like the joy that brings to me. And I say that, if I can save one life at a time, it's all worth it. And that's when I started volunteering and speaking at shelters, and women come to me in tears, and girls, I bring them the gifts, and they brought the joy to their faces. And this is what I'm telling them and telling you, that just go volunteer and go do what you're good at. It may not look the same to everyone, but today I use my skills to, as I mentioned, as Angeline introduced, that I am a public speaker now. I provide training, and I train law enforcement. I train victim services. I train the community on gender-based violence. That includes domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, and child abuse, and most importantly, the prevention thing that's important. But right now, this has happened. What do we do about the rescue? And because of my background, I integrated with my work experience. I mentioned I had a business before. In the layman's term is like international trade. So I was a consultant working with a lot of the international businesses, such as Schlumberger, Lyondell, Basel, Caterpillar, helping executives train them on cross-cultural communication, helping them on business ethics, etiquettes. And for example, I provide consulting services, training at SBDC, scores. Well, back then it was common or popular as doing business in China 101. But who knows that today I'm using these skills to train the law enforcement, to train the services providers, to teach them about the culture. But more importantly, people see me say, well, you look Asian. Are you talking about only Asian? Well, it is true that I do talk about Asian. Well, it is true that in sex trafficking, when it comes to illicit massage businesses, if you all don't already know, there are 13,000 illicit massage businesses across the country, and majority victims are from Korea and China. And Angeline, you're in New York. There's like a huge operation over there. So I do share my experience in that. But in other cases, I get to share the experience about what is the differences of the cultural differences, say the Arabic speaking community, say the underrepresented communities, such as, say, African American community, Hispanic community, and all of the underrepresented communities, to share with their differences with the law enforcement, to help them really help with the victims. Remember, if we can be efficiently helping those law enforcement catching the perpetrator, put them behind the bars or accountable, then we can save the lives for the victims faster, so that they can be on the trauma recovery journey sooner.
Exactly. And we have, hold on one second. I have a new subscriber, and actually, Miran, thank you for joining us today. I was live on TikTok earlier this morning, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you very much for tuning in, Miran. Much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for supporting the cause. And I want to give a shout out to Lynn. Lynn is here. I know she says hello from Earth, but I know where she's tuning in from. So, yeah, wow, what great insight. And how did you become because, with poly victimization, okay, that's not really talked about here. in the US. So what is, what are lawmakers doing in Houston, Texas right now to bring awareness
Well,
to this?
I must say that a lot of great work has been done. And, I think years ago, if we talk about human trafficking, people don't know. And I just talked to some people that they give you like the deer in the headlight look, like, huh? That kind of look. But today, I must say that so much great work has been done that people are beginning to say, oh, yes, I heard about human trafficking. Yes, I know about sex trafficking. Yes, I might even know something, it's happening in our backyard. That's what we say it. But once in a while, we do come across, and just like about a month ago, and I was speaking in a group, and they were like, oh, really? This is happening to us too? And so this is sort of what I say. It's like we need to plant a seed, and we need to water the seed, and we might not even see the flowers blossom, but somebody get to do that. And this is what it looks like about polyvictimization in terms of human trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault. And I wanted to touch upon the intersections. I talked about the power and control, even though I didn't reference to it, about my perpetrator, how he treated me, from flowering me with gifts and chocolate to eventually abuse me. But that same method is used for grooming, for human trafficking. And you see the resemblance. That's why I said we must cure ourselves and get our self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-love back before we can go on the healing journey. Because a lot of the victims, just like myself, for example, I went from one to another because I didn't understand that. And it's so similar. So the same method can be used by the perpetrator in an intimate partner relationship violence, as well as domestic violence, as well as human trafficking. So how do you recognize those signs that I just talked about? So when someone is going out of the way, then you really need to do your due diligence, not just what they say. Check their friend circles, check their behavior, not just what they say. And nowadays, there are social media, so check their social media if they have social media. But in terms of going back to the policy work, a lot of great work has been done, as you know, here in the United States. Every state is different, and very unfortunately, Houston counts when it comes to human trafficking number one on criminal rates in the entire nation as a city. And Texas counts as the number two in crime rates. Number two in all the states in the United States. And because of that, there are so many NGOs, so many task forces, so many agencies. Like I have said on the Texas Human Trafficking Survivor Leader Council under Governor Abbott's leadership, and so many other task forces and councils. And I think a lot of work has improved, but I think there is so much work to improve. One of the things that I push really hard for is because of the stigma that I talked about. And it is not just about Asian people, but imagine those underreported or non-reported crimes. The victims, they're not in the database. And I'm all about data-driven policy. And I'm all about, if you don't have those data, say, very unfortunately, say I'm Chinese, and Angeline, do you mind I ask, your ancestries, your ethnicity, where you're from?
Greece.
Greece. Yeah, I sort
So
of
it's actually similar. We're very similar because I was told that if you love yourself, you're being selfish.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
That
Give, and stay in a bad marriage even if you're not happy. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
right.
It doesn't work that way in the
You
US.
know, that's what I found out as I was working in this field, because I used to think, well, maybe it's just Asians, but reconfirmed, I think, I realized, like, so many of the ethnicities are like having the similarities, even if we might not call it the same name. Like, here the African Americans, they call it what happens in the family stays in the family, but it's essentially all the same thing. And that's really, I think, what's important is like those people who are not reported, going back to the missing data and the data driven policy. So how can we serve those underserved communities, say the Greek communities, not just in New York, across the country, the Arabic speaking, the
Arabic speak.
Hispanic community, right? Arabic very similar too, and also the Asian community, and amongst other like African American, and even like the tribal community. So many communities are underrepresented, are not reported. But how can we have those data to make those data driven policy? Because let's say, I'm giving you an example. Say, I was just talking to one of the national leading NGOs that just recently did the data research on human trafficking survivor. And there was only about 20 to 25% of mixed race Asian people reporting on that. And we all know, and that was just happened to be, one of the example. And again, they said the majority of the people that participated in this study was mainly white and black, and even Hispanic. They were not in this survey a lot because of
Right.
so many different cultural barriers. So if they're not in this survey, clearly their numbers are not in in this. And our government used these numbers to make their policies. So that affects the policy making. And with the policy making, we allocate funding, allocating funding for designing programs to efficiently help resolve this problem, whether it's rescuing the victims or prevention in the long run. But how can we do that? And this is something I'm pushing really hard for, that we really need to work really harder on these data driven policies to accurately report those data, gather those data to be more efficiently save those victims, because these are lives.
Exactly, exactly. And here is Lynn. She just said, my ex is from Morocco and they believe the same way. And this is Ellie McDonald. Exactly, Angeline. So, ladies, I would ask you please to scroll up to the caption that is on my live and click on streamyard.com/Facebook. When you click on that link, it'll show your name. So this way I don't keep seeing Facebook user, but I'm on my phone right now so I can see the comments on my phone. But yeah, I mean, it's a global issue. And there was a young lady who reached out to me from Ghana, South Africa, Ghana, West Africa. And she went through, domestic violence. And then I interviewed a lady, you probably know her, Helping Hands Kenya. So I interviewed Julie on my podcast. So she was talking about, you know, the situation in Kenya and what she's doing. So the work that you're doing is wonderful. I mean, breaking the stigma, breaking the silence. And even in New York State now, they're pushing for more funding now for domestic abuse survivors because they need a place to live. I was homeless too. 15 years ago, I was sleeping on people's couches. Same thing. Same thing, people. Nothing different. I went through the depths of despair to freedom and liberation. And I really had to dig deep. And I mean, I didn't want to live this way anymore, but I knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, thank you, Angeline, for sharing this with me. It's really close to my heart, and it's not easy for us to talk about homelessness, especially you came from corporate America. It came from owning a business to really have to swallow our pride to admit that we were homeless. But I think if it means that we can share this story to empower other people, say, we have been up and downs, but today we're back higher, and sky is not the limit. There is no limit as long as you put your mind to it, and nobody can stop that. And our enemies, they cannot stop us. And you talked about the funding and the shelters, that I wanted to mention that it is my dream. We talked about the shelter. My mission is to build the shelters, but not just the shelters. My goal is to start the shelters around the country, in the United States, around the world, but also very importantly, those traumas that we have been through. So my vision is to build shelters along with in-house trauma recovery center to help people recover from the mental health aspect, and also very importantly to build a social enterprise to provide them with the jobs. A lot of the human trafficking survivors, again, they can be what we call a dual shelter, or try a shelter that has different survivors, and human trafficking survivors in different states have different laws. We're trying to decriminalize the survivors because they have convictions as prostitution, especially long time before, and now we're trying to hold more accountabilities for the buyers. And I know in Texas we're pushing for a bill for the landlord to not let those illicit massage businesses rent those spaces if we know that they're providing those sex trafficking, illegal criminal activities. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but it's looking good that so many activists like yourself are on the front line and doing this, and I really appreciate the work that you do.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And my pleasure. And next week, speaking of the shelter, so I've been invited to, not to speak, but I am going to be a speaker who I interviewed last week on my podcast. She is hosting a workshop next week at the domestic violence shelter in the capital region area. So I'm planning to go because what I'm going to be doing is down the road, I'll be, speaking and providing workshops and resources for domestic abuse survivors. And I'm glad that now, we are actionists. It's more than just being an advocate. We are actionists and taking massive action because,
Yes.
yeah. And now, did you have support of law enforcement when you were going through um, your poly victimization?
I must say that I think there are improvements in my personal experience that can be made. And I think that's what one of the many reasons for me to be inspired to do what I do today, to train the law enforcement officers as well as the law enforcement executives. Just this past month, I provided the breakout session to law enforcement executives, and more organizations are reaching out, and different podcasts that are law enforcement specific, and conferences are reaching out. But one of the things is, of course, my experience, my lived experience, as well as my work experience. And I apologize that I didn't touch much about my work experience with like HSI, ICE, and DOJ. So pretty much like long time ago when I was working on cases, and including like illegal aliens, and today we know that it's labor trafficking. We worked on cases that that didn't have a work permit, and they have other criminal activities. Again, that was labor trafficking, but we didn't know. I think education is key. We really need to equip ourselves when it comes to our community, our parents, our youth at risk, who are at high risk, especially with the online and social media platforms, that it is so easy to fall victimization to that. But also to train the frontliners, that are law enforcement and the victim services, because I feel like there are gaps that can be filled. Like, to give you an example, when I have to file the victim like do the victim interview, and they have to do the report. But how many victims, how many survivors, and because we don't call ourselves victims anymore, right? How many survivors, how many overcomers have had that experience that you have to tell your story over and over and over? You tell the police officer, then you go to whoever your case manager, you tell the same story. and then they refer you to whoever else and tell the same story. What if we can have just one person that is the caseworker from the top until the day they are healed? And we all know that trust is a big issue, especially for survivors. So if you have to just go talk to a stranger about what you have just been through, especially you're traumatized, I don't feel like talking about it, but they make you talk about it. I think there are so many different things that can be improved in the system, and that's one of the many things I'm pushing for.
Good for you. Wow. Wow. Yeah, you are amazing, Eileen. You are amazing. So, oh, I had a comment here. Hold on one second. Let me just see. I think this is from Lynn. Always law enforcement and judicial system needs total reform regarding this issue. See?
Totally. And I
I
link,
agree. It needs improvement, no doubt about it. No doubt
yeah.
about it.
Yeah, Angeline and I were, talking about, you were talking about the Texas policy, and you talked about Capitol Hill. In fact, I will be on the Capitol Hill myself, advocating for human rights. And if you guys are interested, and if you think that we can be of any help, Angeline and I think, you can reach me at the website Angeline is posting on, at the bottom,
Yes, I mean,
eileenDong.com. And I think that's really important. And I'm actually, this is really great timing right now, because some of you if you're in the States, you know that right this year is the legislative session, so it's still finalizing things, and we're hoping some of the bills will be passed. But I'm hoping that towards the end of this session, say like June, July, we will consolidate all the bills to see what are the gaps that needs to be filled. And I am your advocate. Whatever, whether you are already speaking out, you haven't speaking out, or for some reason you cannot, I will be your voice. And if you reach out to me to say what you think that needs to be improved, I would be happy to help you. And if we need to set up an appointment to discuss that, I will be here for you as well.
great. Okay, um, so ladies and gentlemen, you could go to Eileen's website, which is www.eileendong.com, and you have your email there too, correct?
Yes, you can just click on contact us. There's the contact form, then you can reach out to me directly.
Good. Okay. Okay, great.
Yes. And,
That's
and
that's awesome. That's awesome because that's important. You are the voice. We are voices for domestic violence survivors. And now, I feel now with the pressure of the economy, because we have there's layoffs, inflation is on the increase, there's more pressure. There is a lot more pressure, especially for, single moms who need help. So, oh, my ex got off on a set of charges because they couldn't prove what day of the week the abuse happened. See that?
there are so many holes that we need to do. Like today I just had an interview with one of the digital forensic experts on on the digital evidence and everything. And it is really sad that the system is based on the evidence. And reach out to me, see how we can help you, and if there's anything that we can do. But definitely, like I said, it is my goal to represent the ones who are voiceless, but I cannot
Right.
do this alone. We need to do this jointly. I know that Angeline is great, with the corporate world. I have experience doing the international business, but we need you all. We need you to have your lived experience to come say, I have this experience, and this is why this needs improving. And I think
Right.
this is just like so important. And once we have this policy formulated, then we can go talk to our local senators and representatives and have them support those bills. But it is like I said in the beginning, this is something that we're planting the seeds. This is something we're watering the seed. And I don't want you to think like this is not going to be successful, but it might not take one shot. It might take two shots or even three shots.
Mhm.
But once we get this message out there, somebody get to do this work. And I have been called to do this work. I didn't understand when I was going through this. I was like, Angeline, you talked about like being homeless. I don't understand. I was like, why would I have to be homeless here? If I were in China, this happened, I'm like, screw you. I'm going to my mother's or my family, and I've got a place to go, and I'm not afraid of you. But here, I was like, I didn't mention that I was so afraid that I will be murdered and cut into pieces and fed into by the alligators, that my parents, my family cannot find my dead body. And I was so scared because I don't know what to do. So I'm sure that so many of you can relate to, and you don't have to be like a foreigner like myself. You can be from a different state, or you can be just having family here, but you're not close. And I'm sure you're not no, you don't you're not the only person that experienced that, because you're not alone. So I wanted to share that with you.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you shared that with me. And I know myself. I mean, I have family in Greece. I have, my mom who was still alive. My parents, they lived in Minnesota. I could have easily gone back home, but I decided not to. I decided not to. And you and I, like I said, we have, you and I have similar stories. Now, I think let me just go to the comments here. Homelessness is what kept me from leaving. Okay. I understand that. I totally get it. Yep.
It is fearful. It takes a huge leap of faith to avoid homelessness, because we all it's the unknown that we're used to, that comfort. It doesn't have to be luxury, but the comfort that we already know. But it's the unknown out there. What's gonna happen? But you have to understand that we must break this cycle, and we must break this silence. And the statistics shows it takes 7 times for a domestic violence victim, as well as the human trafficking victims, to leave this situation. And many of the reasons include, one of them is the homelessness, the financial reasons, language barrier, legal obstacles. But you must think that if you end it sooner, then you can start sooner.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a like you said. I'm sorry. It takes a big leap of faith. And but I know for myself, I don't know about you, but I'm sure I know for me, once I took that leap of faith, like I said, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember when I was still living down county in the Rhinebeck, New York area, that's in the Hudson Valley of New York State, I used to go to this coffee shop every single day. Every single day I would go. And they said, come here anytime. And, people welcomed me. They said, you're safe here. Nothing, to worry about. But, it was still, but I did it. I mean, you and I did it. I mean, I was living like a gypsy for literally a year and a half.
I
So,
hear you. I was kind of living out of the car, because what we call shelter hopping, they only have like how many weeks, I forgot, that you can stay there. So I don't really have a place to put my clothes. So I was like, people said, "Do you live out of your car?" I'm like, I was embarrassed, but that was just the reality, and we had to go through. But we look back, say it's all worth it, because today we come out stronger.
that's right. Today we come out much stronger. Exactly. Exactly. And once you, like I said, you take that leap of faith and you are able to take ownership, then believe it or not, everything falls into place. So, and
Totally.
45 days, let me just see. That was Lynn, 45 days. So she said 45 days. Okay.
Yes, I'm
There you
proud
go.
of you, Lynn.
Yes, she's amazing. Lynn is always, she's in my private Facebook group. So she's always, whenever I go live, she's always there. And Lynn, let's have a conversation. I would love to learn, more about you. And actually, for the members in my community, I would love for you to share your stories. Like I said, my Facebook community is a safe space for all of you. So, yeah, so I'm, like I said, Eileen, your story is so incredible. I am just in awe right now. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. So in closing, what is a special message that you would like to share with the viewers who are tuning in today, and for people who are going to be watching the replay and tuning into the podcast episode, which will be launched, by the way, in 2 weeks. So what's a special message that you would like to share?
I would like to tell everyone that the grass is greener on the other side. You might not see it, and you're that close. And the only reason that you're that close, you don't see it now, and you feel like you always have the obstacle, is because you're close to the victory. And that, we are not just myself, me and Angeline, we're good examples of success story that, once you come out of it, what the work you can do to help other people. And the sooner you can get out of this situation, the sooner you can rebuild yourself. And we are out here for you, and there is a community. But I want you to be safe. That make sure that if this is like a violent situation and you are isolated, like myself in the past, then make sure that you go talk to whether the law enforcement and or a caseworker to make a safety plan before you leave. And this is something I want to say very importantly. And also, I want to kind of make an announcement. I would love to join this Facebook group. So please, Angelina, send me the invite. And I also have a community of survivors from human trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault on Facebook. That is on my website as well. It's the International Survivors Network, and so it's a safe space as well. I think it will be helpful, like maybe we can like even have like a joint conversation together. And also very importantly, two announcements. Last year we held the International Book Awards as well as the Conference on Abuse, and it's coming up again end of this year, and the date is to be confirmed. The Book Awards is not for anyone or just the fictional book, but rather for the voiceless, and or the advocates on human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and violent crimes. And the link is on my website as well if you look for the 2023 International Book Awards and Conference on Abuse. And once again, the Conference on Abuse will also be a part of this big movement. Last year, we had the 2-day conference with 1 day of speakers, day 2 of CEU, and end of the day was the ceremony. So we're going to keep a little bit secret from you about what awards will be handed out, and tune in on the website. And I look forward to helping you and working together with you, because only when we work together can we end this together.
Right, exactly. Well said, Eileen. And what is the name of your Facebook group again?
It's the International Survivors Network.
All right, let me mark. All right, because
I think if you search for it, it might not show directly. I'm not sure. Is there like a chat box, Angeline, that I can send it to you?
You can send it to me, and then I'll put it in the comments. I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Let me see. Yes, I can do that. So you can share in the show notes, because I don't see there's an option to put in the chat box.
Okay, so International Survivors Network. I'm actually part of your group. So International Survivors Network Facebook group. I will put the link in the comments here, and it'll be in the show notes. So this new podcast episode will launch in 2 weeks, because I have another one that's already committed for next week. So this will be launched in 2 weeks, but right now we're live on YouTube. So this will be in the show notes, and also in my private Facebook group and my Facebook fan page, which is Let's Break the Silence. I will put that link in the comments. So I'll just make a note of that right now so I don't forget. I will do it after the broadcast. All right, Eileen, listen, it was such a pleasure to have you on my show today, because I know we've been working really hard to schedule this. And also, please go to Eileen's website, which is www.eileendong.com. And for everyone who is tuning in here live, and for those who are going to be watching the replay, please like and subscribe to my podcast, which is Let's Break the Silence with Angeline, on Anchor FM, Spotify, Google, Apple, and all the live streams. And we're live here on YouTube right now. So please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Let's Break the Silence with Angeline. And also, on my website, there is a pop-up to subscribe to my newsletter for announcements. We have a weekly broadcast that goes out every Friday, and I would love for you to be a part of that, because there's going to be live events coming down the road and workshops. Okay. And obviously, Eileen broke the silence today on my podcast. So my podcast is all about breaking the silence on domestic abuse and helping women survivors amplify their voice and regain their power and regain their peace and confidence. And they share their real life stories of thriving after domestic abuse. So, Eileen, we'll hang out in the green room after the broadcast, but this broadcast is coming to a close. If you found value from this live broadcast today, please hashtag value in the comments below. And ladies and gentlemen, we wish you all an amazing day.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet all of you. Nice to see everyone.